Everyone told me I'd regret letting my wife walk away. They all changed their minds the moment she tried to come back, because by then, I'd uncovered a secret worth millions. The day my wife Emily left me, she expected tears. She expected me to chase her into the driveway, promise to change, and beg for another chance. Instead, I stood silently on the front porch as she loaded the last suitcase into the trunk of a black SUV. She didn't even look sad. She looked relieved. When she closed the trunk, she flashed the same confident smile I'd fallen in love with 12 years earlier. "I'll give you a week," she said. I frowned. "A week for what?" She laughed as though I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. "To realize you can't live without me." Then she climbed into the passenger seat beside a man I'd never met. The SUV disappeared around the corner. My neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, walked over holding his coffee. "I'm sorry, son," he said quietly. I nodded without answering. "You'll regret letting her go." Those words followed me into the empty house. Maybe he was right. Maybe I should have fought harder. Maybe every marriage deserved one last chance. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. The silence in the house was unbearable. For 12 years, every room had echoed with Emily's voice. Now all I heard was the ticking of the kitchen clock. I wandered into our bedroom. Her side of the closet was empty. The dresser drawers were open. Even our wedding photo had disappeared. She hadn't just left. She had erased herself. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the ceiling. Had she planned this for weeks? Months? The answer came sooner than I expected. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my bank. Large transfer completed. My heart skipped. I opened the banking app. Nearly every dollar from our joint savings account was gone. Over $186,000. Transferred overnight. I immediately called the bank. The representative apologized politely. "Your wife was listed as a joint account holder, sir. So she could legally transfer everything?" "I'm afraid so." I ended the call and just sat there. That money wasn't just savings. It represented 12 years of overtime. Weekend jobs. Missed vacations. Birthdays spent working. Everything. Gone. My best friend Ryan came over that afternoon carrying pizza and beer. He looked around the quiet house. So. You gonna call her?" "No." He nearly dropped the pizza. No. He stared at me. "Dude, she's waiting for that call." "I know." "You still love her?" I sighed. "I don't even know who she is anymore." Ryan nodded slowly. "Good. What do you mean?" "If she emptied your savings before leaving." He paused. This wasn't a breakup. It was a plan. Those words stayed with me all night. 3 days later, I met with a divorce attorney. She reviewed everything silently. Then she asked one strange question. "Did your wife inherit anything recently?" I blinked. "No." "Any businesses?" "No." "Any investment properties?" "Not that I know of." She leaned back. "Then something doesn't make sense." "What?" "People who leave like this usually already have another financial safety net." I frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your wife seems very confident. Confident people usually know something other people don't." That sentence refused to leave my mind. What did Emily know? That I didn't? For the next week, I searched through every document left inside the house. Tax returns. Mortgage paperwork. Insurance files. Nothing. Everything looked normal. Until I opened an old filing cabinet in the garage. It belonged to my late grandfather. I hadn't touched it since his funeral 5 years earlier. Inside were dusty folders filled with faded papers, property tax receipts, land surveys, letters from the 1970s. One yellow envelope caught my attention. Across the front, in my grandfather's handwriting, were 5 words. For Daniel. Open carefully. Daniel. My name. My hand started shaking. Why had I never seen this before? I opened the envelope. Inside was a folded map, a handwritten letter, and an old key taped to the paper. The letter read, "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. There's something I've kept secret for decades. Our family owns more than anyone realizes. Trust no one until you've confirmed the truth yourself. Especially those who suddenly become interested in you after I'm gone." I read the last sentence again. Especially those who suddenly become interested in you after I'm gone. Emily had become unusually affectionate after my grandfather's funeral. Back then, I thought she was simply helping me through grief. Now, I wasn't so sure. My phone buzzed again. Emily. Her first message in 8 days. "Have you calmed down yet?" I didn't reply. Another message arrived. "You know you'll call eventually." Still nothing. 5 minutes later. "I left a few things at the house. Don't touch them." I looked around. There wasn't a single thing she'd left behind. Except one locked wooden box on the top shelf of our bedroom closet. I had ignored it because I'd assumed it belonged to her. Now, I wasn't so sure anymore. That night, I climbed onto a chair and carefully pulled the dusty wooden box down. It was heavier than it looked. There was no label. No name. Only a tiny brass lock. Then I remembered. The old key from my grandfather's envelope. It couldn't be. Could it? With trembling hands, I slid the antique key into the lock. Click. It fit perfectly. As the lid slowly opened, I saw stacks of old documents, faded photographs, and a sealed legal file stamped with one chilling phrase: "Confidential, property rights." Before I could read another word, headlights swept across my living room window. Someone had pulled into my driveway. I looked outside. It was Emily. And she wasn't alone. Emily stood outside my front door with the same confident smile she'd worn the day she left. Only this time, she wasn't smiling because she thought I'd beg. She was smiling because she believed she still had control. Standing beside her was the same man who had driven her away a week earlier. He wore an expensive suit and leaned casually against the SUV, arms crossed. I quietly closed the lid of the wooden box and slid it beneath my grandfather's old workbench in the garage. Neither of them could know what I'd just found. Not yet. Emily knocked twice. I opened the door just enough to speak. "What do you want?" She looked surprised. "No hug?" "No." Her smile faded slightly. "I came for the rest of my things." "You already took everything." She folded her arms. "I left a wooden box." "I don't know what you're talking about." For the first time, I saw panic flicker across her face. It lasted only a second. Then she smiled again. "You've always been a terrible liar." I shrugged. "You can believe whatever you want." The man beside her stepped forward. "I'm Mark." "I didn't ask." Emily sighed dramatically. "Daniel, stop acting childish." I looked at her without emotion. "You left me. You'll get over it. You emptied our savings. It was my money too. You never planned on coming back." She looked away. That silence answered every question. She tried to push past me. "I'll get the box myself." I blocked the doorway. No. You can't stop me. I can. This house is legally mine too. Not anymore. She frowned. What? I held up a folder. My attorney filed for exclusive possession of the home yesterday. Her face turned pale. You already hired a lawyer? I did. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she laughed. You really think changing the locks and filing paperwork is going to hurt me? No. What hurts you is uncertainty. She blinked. What are you talking about? I smiled for the first time since she'd left. You seem very interested in that little wooden box. Neither Emily nor Mark spoke. That told me everything. After they drove away, I immediately called my attorney. When I described the box and the documents inside, she became unusually quiet. Daniel, she finally said, don't show those papers to anyone. Why? Because if they're genuine, they could be worth a fortune. My heartbeat quickened. How much? I honestly don't know. But enough that someone might lie, steal, or manipulate to get them. The next morning, I drove to the county records office carrying copies of my grandfather's papers. A gray-haired clerk studied them for nearly 20 minutes. Then his expression changed. Where did you get these? My grandfather. He disappeared into a back room. 10 minutes later he returned with an elderly surveyor. The surveyor adjusted his glasses. I haven't seen these maps in over 30 years. What are they? He spread the map across the desk. You see this land? I nodded. It used to be farmland. So? It isn't farmland anymore. He pointed toward a nearby highway. This entire area has become commercial property. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? It means whoever owns these mineral and land rights. He looked directly at me. Owns property developers have been trying to buy for years. I could barely breathe. How much is it worth? The old man smiled. I wouldn't even guess. But I can tell you one thing. What? If these documents are valid, you've been sitting on a gold mine. I drove home in complete silence. Suddenly everything made sense. Emily hadn't fallen out of love. She'd discovered something. Something my grandfather had hidden. Something she thought she could take. But she'd left too early. She never found the documents. That evening Ryan came over again. I showed him everything. He stared at the papers in disbelief. Holy. I know. You think Emily knew? I don't know. Ryan picked up one photograph from the box. Who's this? It showed my grandfather standing beside two men in front of a large wooden sign. The sign read, Briar Creek Holdings. I had never heard that name before. Neither had Ryan. Then we turned the photograph over. Written on the back were 7 words. Never sell without reading the contract first. Ryan looked at me. Your grandfather was trying to warn you. At exactly 9:30 that night, someone tried to break into my garage. The security camera on my phone flashed an alert. I watched live as a hooded figure forced open the side door. He walked directly toward the workbench. Toward the hidden wooden box. He knew exactly where it was. I immediately called 911. The intruder grabbed the box. But before he could escape, police sirens echoed down the street. He dropped the box and ran into the darkness. The officers searched the neighborhood but never found him. The next morning, Detective Harris reviewed my security footage. He paused the video. Zoomed in. Then looked at me. I know this truck. What? It belongs to a private investigation company. My eyebrows rose. A private investigator? He nodded. They're usually hired by lawyers. Or wealthy clients. That afternoon my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A calm voice said, "Mr. Carter. We'd like to discuss purchasing your grandfather's property rights." "I don't own any property rights." There was a long silence. Then the caller quietly replied, "I think you do." The line went dead. I stood frozen. I hadn't told anyone. Not even the county office had finished verifying the documents. So how did they know? As I turned toward the living room window, I saw Emily sitting in a black SUV across the street, watching my house. Watching me. And suddenly I realized. She wasn't trying to get back together. She was waiting for me to make one mistake. Emily sat in the black SUV across the street for nearly an hour. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was waiting. Waiting for me to panic, to make a mistake, or to reveal where my grandfather's documents were hidden. I did none of those things. Instead, I closed every curtain, unplugged the garage opener, and carried the wooden box to my attorney's office first thing the next morning. My attorney, Lisa Morgan, locked the conference room before opening the file. She carefully read every page. Halfway through, she removed her glasses and stared at me. "Daniel, these documents are real." I swallowed hard. So, my grandfather wasn't imagining things? She shook her head. Not even close. She pointed to an old contract dated 1988. "Your grandfather never sold the mineral rights beneath that land." "I don't understand." She smiled. "Most people sold everything when developers came. But your grandfather only sold the surface land. He secretly kept ownership of everything underneath." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means every company that has built shopping centers, warehouses, and office parks there has been leasing underground rights without realizing the original ownership still exists." My heart pounded. So, they've been paying millions into escrow while ownership remained disputed. How much? Lisa slid another document toward me. "The current estimated value." She paused. "Is just over $11 million. I couldn't speak. For 12 years, Emily and I had argued over grocery bills, mortgage payments, and overtime shifts. While my grandfather had quietly left behind a fortune. Lisa leaned forward. "There's one more thing." "What?" "The beneficiary listed here." She tapped the paper. "Is only you. No spouse. No joint ownership. No transfer rights." Emily couldn't claim a single dollar. That afternoon I finally understood why she'd left. She hadn't walked away because our marriage failed. She had walked away because she believed she'd already won. She thought the money in our savings account was enough. She never found the real treasure. 3 days later my phone rang. It was Emily. For the first time since leaving. Her voice sounded nervous. "Can we talk?" "What about?" "I made a mistake." I almost laughed. "You seemed pretty confident last week." "I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking very clearly." Silence. Then she whispered. "Please." I agreed to meet her at a quiet coffee shop. She looked exhausted. Gone was the confident woman who had smiled while leaving me. Dark circles framed her eyes. Mark was nowhere to be seen. She reached across the table. "I miss us." I pulled my hand away. "No." Tears filled her eyes. "I still love you." I looked directly into them. "No, Emily. You love certainty. When you thought I had nothing. You walked away. When you think I might have something. You came back." She couldn't answer. Finally she admitted it. I heard rumors after your grandfather died. What rumors? That he owned land developers couldn't access. You knew? I wasn't sure. So you searched the house. She lowered her head. I couldn't find anything. So you left. I thought if we divorced, I'd still get half later. I stared at her in disbelief. You planned this? She quietly nodded. Every piece of the puzzle finally fit together. As I stood to leave, Emily grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. I've lost everything. I looked down at her hand. No. You lost me. There's a difference. I walked away without looking back. A week later Detective Harris called. We arrested the man who broke into your garage. Who was he? A private investigator. Who hired him? There was a pause. Mark. And Emily knew. The investigation uncovered emails between Mark and Emily dating back almost a year. They had hired investigators. Copied my house keys. Followed my grandfather's former business partners. Even searched storage units hoping to find missing paperwork. Their entire relationship had started because of one thing. Money. Mark was charged with attempted burglary, conspiracy, and destruction of property. Emily wasn't criminally charged. But during the divorce proceedings, every email became public record. Friends stopped calling. Family members refused to defend her. Even her own parents apologized to me. My answer was simple. This isn't your burden to carry. 6 months later, the court finalized everything. The judge awarded me the house. Emily kept the money she'd taken from the joint account. But because she'd hidden assets, lied under oath, and violated financial disclosure rules, she was ordered to repay nearly every dollar she had taken. With interest. Nearly a year passed. The land rights dispute was finally settled. One crisp October morning, Lisa called. It's official. The funds have cleared. $11 million. After taxes and legal fees, it was still more money than I had ever imagined. I paid off every debt. Created scholarships in my grandfather's name. Renovated the small neighborhood library where he had spent countless afternoons reading. And I quietly retired from the job that had consumed half my life. One evening, as I watered the flowers on my front porch, a familiar car stopped across the street. Emily stepped out. She looked older. Life had not been kind to her. She walked slowly toward the gate. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Not for leaving. Not for betraying me. Not even for trying to steal my inheritance. She was sorry because her plan had failed. I smiled politely. I forgive you. Hope flashed across her face. Then I finished the sentence. But forgiveness doesn't mean another chance. I closed the gate gently. She stood there for several seconds before turning away. This time, she walked away alone. As I looked toward the old oak tree my grandfather had planted decades earlier, I finally understood the lesson he had hidden inside that faded envelope. Real wealth isn't measured by money. It's measured by the people who stay beside you when they believe you have nothing. Emily thought I'd spend the rest of my life begging her to come back. Instead, I changed the locks, uncovered a family secret worth millions, and discovered that the greatest inheritance my grandfather left me wasn't the fortune beneath the ground. It was the wisdom to never confuse love with greed.